because I want you to tell people what your position is, but more importantly, how you got it. Because we're delighted that the League US has kind of expanded outreach to our local leagues and our state leagues by setting up regional representatives. And I've had the opportunity to be on some of Jessica's webinars talking about league organization and management. But what's really exciting for us at UMRR is that she's a Minnesotan and has been a longtime league member and a former national board member. Am I right there?
You are.
Jessica, yes. So if you could unmute yourself, and so introduce yourself to our group and tell us what your job is.
I will. Well, I'm really happy to be here.
We're not hearing you, Jessica.
You're not hearing me?
You look like you're unmuted.
What about now?
No sound.
Can you hear me?
I hear
you know
her.
what? I think it's
The wonders of
Jessica's
Zoom.
okay. It's Mary Ellen's sound. She got turned off somehow. Can someone tell her?
Mary Ellen, your
Ellen's-
sound is turned off.
Yeah, I don't think. she
Gretchen,
can
you
hear-
don't have her accidentally muted, do you?
Nope.
We
Uh,
can hear her. No, we can hear her.
Gretchen, you'll have to text Mary Ellen and tell
She
her that
hasn't
we're
been
all
responding
hearing.
to my
Okay.
texts. I can try. I'll try.
Can you
phoning
figure it
her.
out, Jess?
When we pick these are all brand new in a box of steel.
What are they?
Depends, you know, this is when I had my
Hi,
Okay.
Mary Ellen?
yes, Jessica's muted.
No, she's not. Turn your sound on.
I am on.
We hear your mic, but we don't hear your. We can hear Jessica, and we hear you, and we hear you trying to reach Jessica. So I think that she's set to go.
Okay, how is it now?
It's good.
Can you hear me
Can you hear
now?
me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I unplugged my earbuds, Jessica. My bad. I will forever be a techie nerd. Okay,
Okay, so
Welcome,
start back over.
Jessica.
Start back over with an introduction. Okay.
yes, okay. So welcome Jessica Rolhoff, a former board member of League US, a Minnesota League member who has now accepted a position with League US as our regional representative. And I'm going to let her explain what that job is and what her role is in terms of our region. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for having me tonight. My dog is a big fan of the Mississippi River, loves to swim in it. He may or may not make an appearance tonight. I just tried to put him outside the door, so we'll all keep our fingers crossed. You invited me here tonight to talk a little bit about League and democracy and my role in League. But first, I want everybody to picture a stretch of land filled with an ocean of prairie grass and wildflowers. And think of those deep, fibrous roots holding the soil, caring for it, and helping to keep the sediment and pollution out of the water system. Think of how it binds that soil together, preventing dust storms and flash floods. Now picture the wildflowers that are providing nectar and pollen, as well as places of shelter and rest. And finally, envision the bees and the birds spreading the pollen and seeds. So can you picture that? If someone can give me a head nod or a thumbs up. All right. All these different varieties of native grasses, flowers, and creatures working together to make our home healthier, better, and more suitable for life. So I really see democracy as the prairie grass that holds the people of our country together. And we as League members are really the wildflowers, the birds, the butterflies, and the bees. So I will tell you a little bit more about myself and my League story. I was born, raised, and still live in rural Western Minnesota. I was born the daughter of dairy farmers, and I live about 45 miles from the Mississippi River. And as is the case with many Minnesotans, at some point in my childhood, I was brought to Itasca State Park to walk across the Mississippi headwaters. So I have always voted, but I became politically active in 2006 when my brother decided to run for office. And the reason he ran for office was because he couldn't get his county commissioner to return his phone call. And what my brother wanted to talk to him about was, of all things, water quality concerns regarding a proposed housing development near a shallow water lake. Well, we lost that election, but it created enough pressure that there was a settlement that created building restrictions, ensuring practices were in place to maintain water quality standards. So after that, I carried on in partisan politics, eventually running for office myself in 2012. I lost that election as well. But that year, I received an invitation to the League of Women Voters holiday party. And I joined League before I left the restaurant, which is either a lesson to never bring your checkbook to something like that, or to always bring your checkbook to something like that, depending upon your perspective. My story is a lot like Gretchen's. So I volunteered in different capacities with my local league. And I also was participating in the campaign for the Secretary of State of Minnesota. So my primary motivation for volunteering in that campaign was to promote the restoration of voting rights for returning citizens. I secured a promise from that candidate that he would make this a priority, and he secured a position on the ballot. His endorsement campaign was the last partisan campaign I have been a part of. And I am happy to report that earlier this year, I was able to thank him for keeping his promise and being part of the successful effort of returning the vote to approximately 60,000 disenfranchised Minnesota voters. So I tell you this because I fulfilled that last partisan role the first week of June 2014 at a state party convention. And about a week later, I found myself newly elected as a local league president on my way to attending the League of Women Voters National Convention in Dallas, Texas. To say going from a partisan convention to a National League of Women Voters convention was jarring would be an understatement. In the first place, I didn't have to dodge a single set of overly friendly hands my entire time, which was a great relief. But the most profound and undeniable difference between the two was that at the League of Women Voters Convention, people were actually listening to one another. And this had a profound and deep lasting impact on me. And it's probably why I have stayed with the League as long as I have. So the following year, since the local league only supported funding for national conventions, I was on my own to get to Duluth, Minnesota. I was a domestic worker because I live in rural America, and sometimes you take the job that puts food on the table and not the job you have a degree for. So I was really strapped for cash. I could not even stay in the hotel with the other delegates. Instead, I slept in my car at a nearby campground. Still unsure if I actually belonged, I said nothing about this to anyone. It just so happened that year, the president of the League of Women Voters of the United States was attending the Minnesota Convention. During one of the sessions, I stood up at the mic and I made a comment about the ways and the whys of why we need to invite more people to join League and why we needed to find ways to make it accessible for more people. And afterwards, she came up to me and asked me if Elizabeth McNamara asked me if I'd ever considered running for the national board. And my response to her was, there's a national board? What do they do? To my delight and my terror, I was elected, which meant traveling to Washington, D.C. You see, I was excited for the work, but I wasn't just a nervous flyer back then. I was an absolutely not getting on a plane traveler. But with the help of some mindfulness practices and temporary pharmaceutical assistance from my doctor, I got on that plane and I haven't looked back. 3 terms and 6 months later, I have served on audit, budget, fund development, the executive board, leadership development, program committee, and the league structure task force, to name just a few things. I know more about bylaws than is probably good for a person, and I became deeply concerned when I started to understand what the parliamentarian was talking about. So I have since met thousands, literally thousands of incredible league members, many of which are in this meeting, who I consider just the best people, and many people who are very different from me. For example, I am more comfortable covered in dirt, wearing work boots, and I served on the national board with the amazing Maribel Balbine from Miami, Florida. And she is a person I'm convinced wakes up in full flawless makeup and heels every day. But it didn't matter who we were on the outside. It mattered that we were committed to democracy, and much of our strength came from the different life experiences that we brought with us to the table. We were indeed stronger together. I ended my time on the board last spring, and after a few months rest, I proudly joined the national staff as the Midwest regional organizer. So I share my story, not because it's about me, but really because it speaks to principles of democracy itself. The idea that everyone has the potential to contribute. So looking just at the surface of my life at that time, it would have been really easy to count me out. But we don't count people out in democracy. In fact, that's the whole point of having a country that's based on democracy. My story also emphasizes how important it is to purposefully invite people in. What if that one person had never invited me to that holiday party? We must consider how to be more intentional about inviting people into our organization and our democracy. Personal relationships and our own spheres of influence remain the most powerful tool we have in this work. People are more likely to participate if the invitation and information comes from a trusted source. This is true for participation in the league and also for participation in democracy. And this connects directly to the innovations that are occurring across the league. The transformation roadmap and the bylaws changes voted on at convention are aimed at bringing more people from increasingly diverse backgrounds to participate, and in the ways they are most able to do so, because we know we are stronger together, and we need league members united in purpose, as well as non-league members and donors who want to support our work. So we're making it easier to join and easier to participate through innovations like the review of current dues and a restructuring of dues distribution. And this will actually put more money into the work at the local level, as well as strategic investments in staff and technology to support the work at the state and local level. So hiring regional organizers is a part of that investment. As your regional organizer, I'm responsible for creating spaces for networking, community, learning and peer sharing, as well as coordinating efforts where there are shared challenges and opportunities. I am also here to help leagues to understand how they and their work fit into the larger ecosystem, and to see the work as interconnected and ongoing rather than siloed, temporary, and individual projects. I'm sure we've all had that experience where we create a project, we work really hard on it, and then we haven't thought about the next step, so the momentum kind of can stall. And so part of my job is to just show how these things interconnect and flow together. Much like when you guys are talking about watersheds, all things flow together for the purpose of the overall work. So I'm here to help connect the dots in a lot of ways. Other changes are that there has been a complete revamp of Vote 4 and 1. There's also been a reconfiguration of the cost sharing and revenue gathering process. So generating revenue through white label partnerships is now available to state and local users. That used to be something that national used to raise revenue to support it, but now it's switching to allow local and state leagues to do that instead. And for the first time in the last election, we were also able to provide voting information in Spanish, which is incredibly powerful, because even if you know English well enough to vote, to be able to understand in your native language the nuances of candidate responses is incredibly powerful. And we're very proud of being able to offer that. There's also a new legal center with additional staff available to assist states in litigation. There are also staff on the advocacy team now directly dedicated to tracking and assisting with state legislation. So I would really encourage you to go back on the league management website. And even if you've been there before, take another look. There are big changes. Even since I came on in September, there's been big changes. And so it is all aimed at reinvesting in the field. And I really want to talk tonight about a tool that I think the ILO might be interested in using. And that is the new League in Action tool. Some of you might have heard about this as Outreach Circle. So League has been working with Outreach Circle, which is the name of the vendor, since the pandemic started. Because as you all remember, we got kicked off a cliff. So we had to figure out how to do our work digitally. And that is when we first started contracting with Outreach Circle. But I'm really happy to tell you that because we've been in this partnership and because of the states and locals that were, they were like our lead line, our big explorers, right? They went out, they tried the tool, they used it in different ways. We were able to go back to Outreach Circle and say, what we really need is our own app. We need people to download something that doesn't look like Outreach Circle, but looks like the League of Women Voters. And so we now have our own app. It is League in Action. You can search for it in an app store. It has our logo. It looks like us, you know, on your phone where you have all the little square apps. It looks like us. And, you know, in some circles, especially younger circles, if you don't have an app, you simply don't exist. Right now, 100% of the cost this year, 100% of the cost is supported at national. What I have been told is after this year, it will be approximately the cost of a Netflix subscription. So we're talking, you know, somewhere around $20 a month. And the things that it can do is pretty incredible. And it has great potential. And I've seen some leagues like North Dakota, Kentucky, and I'm going to shout out Wisconsin, using it in really creative ways to not only reach and organize the work of members, but also to contact thousands of people beyond the membership. League in Action is compatible with Vote 4 and 1. It is also compatible with, but superior to social media. So what do I mean by that? We all try to put our information out there on Facebook, and we hope that the people who like us will follow us. Well, even if you follow somebody on Facebook or an organization on Facebook, the algorithm does not guarantee that it'll show it to you. League in Action If somebody says that they're going to follow you on League in Action, we have 100% control over that. So, and that user has 100% control over that. So they will see whatever content you put on there. And the administrator, which would be somebody on your board, the administrator controls what gets put on there and how it can be shared and who sees it. So if you have a post or some information you want the public to see, you can put it on there that people can share it on their social media. But it's guaranteed that anybody who is following you on League in Action, they're going to see whatever you send as long as they're looking at your app. So in that way, I say it's superior to social media because we own it and we control it. The other nice thing is you can have a QR code at events. Like you could have a QR code at all of your events that you go to promote water quality in the upper and the ILO, and people can scan that with their phone and then they can just become a supporter right there in the moment. And so they can get all the updates and information that a supporter would get. So really, I think the most powerful aspect of League in Action is the ability to reach out to people you know as a trusted source of information. And this is invaluable in this time of increasing dis and misinformation. The League name carries a lot of weight, but it's become increasingly difficult for us to raise our voice above all the noise. And this is one way to do that with people. North Dakota used it this year to create mini tutorials on how their state legislature works. So imagine learning in 3 minutes, you know, different aspects of state legislature. I don't know how many of you know Whitney from North Dakota, but she's incredible. She's like joyful. She made these videos and people like to watch them. So in Wisconsin, I'm going to shout them out because in the Wisconsin spring election, we were able to maximize our power and efforts, reaching 70,000 voters with fewer than 20 volunteers in 3 one-hour sessions. That's pretty powerful. And one of my favorite things is that we were doing it together on Zoom. And there was a mom who was actually reaching out to people from her daughter's dance lessons. And I was like, that's what we need. We need the power of moms everywhere that are sitting and waiting for their kids to be able to join us in our advocacy. So really, Kentucky has used it to organize their lobby day and to give bite-sized legislative updates with easy to take actions attached. It is a powerful connection to smartphones in a time when most people are incredibly attached to their smartphones. Maybe other people have better habits, but I actually sleep with my phone. So I know many of people my age do sleep with their phone. So to be able to be on that device gives you a lot of access to people. So I also want to talk about what's not changing at League. This is a grassroots organization run through democratic processes. Like nothing has changed about how League takes positions. Nothing has changed about how delegates go to convention. Nothing has changed about how we elect our boards. So I just want to, I think there's a lot of concern and misunderstanding out there. And just to clarify, none of that is changing. We have an unwavering commitment to fierce pursuit of issue-based advocacy and absolute nonpartisanship. So none of that is changing. Finally, I want to share that part of my portfolio on staff is creating room for strengthening engagement in rural areas. And why is this important for us? Well, many reasons. But the fact that every state receives 2 senators, regardless of population, is enough to make it clear that rural America cannot be ignored. Mary Ellen and I have discussed many times there will be no clean water until both rural areas and cities commit to its importance. Rural American politics are often referred to the politics of good enough, and this is partly true. Coming from here, I'll tell you, if it ain't broke, we're not really in a rush to fix it. But our practicality should really never be mistaken for the false idea that things are never broken or that people can't see when they are. So I will challenge to my dying breath any kind of politics that says some things are good enough for those kinds of people. There is no place and there are no such people as those people in a true democracy. In a true democracy, you are either committed to sharing decision-making power with your neighbors or you're not. In a true functioning democracy, voting is the floor of participation, not the ceiling. We have to start fighting this narrative. Lest we forget, voter disenfranchisement is not the loss of some lofty ideal. Voter disenfranchisement is poisoned water that people in power would never want their children to experience, but is somehow good enough for the children where I come from or good enough for the children of Flint, Michigan. Disenfranchisement from democracy, it takes a lot of forms, right? And some of them are really easy to spot, like when you don't have easy access to voter registration or they purge the rolls. But the biggest and most effective form of democratic disenfranchisement is the normalization of an environment of despair, scarcity, helplessness, division, and fear. Are you hearing me, Iowa? You hearing me, Missouri? This is what we're seeing. So we see the problem so clearly, but because we're not isolated from it, it can be incredibly difficult to see the solution. But the antidote must come from a return to the basics of the founding of our organization and the movement for the right of women to vote. We can't forget that it was a fight of close to 100 years. And we can't forget that women were beaten and jailed and forced fed with barbaric methods. So what was their antidote to despair? They gathered in community. They made their case over and over and over again in conversations and letters and lobbying and actions. As times changed, so did the methods and the tactics, but the fundamentals stayed the same. What they did, in short, was to organize. They organized around the principle that women having a say in their own life through the vote was a fundamental necessity for their lives and the health and well-being of the community as a whole. Some have asked me if League is still relevant, and I would say this. The League was not founded to win the vote for people like most of us in this room. The League was founded, in the words of our founders, to finish the fight and aid in the reconstruction of the nation. And can anyone tell me that those words are not still relevant today? The antidote to the despair we're facing is action. So I'm going to ask you to take action tonight. As many of you as possible, download the League in Action app. Follow the LWV US account, and then follow one other league to see what they're doing with it. The antidote to people feeling unheard is to listen. I'm going to challenge everybody here to schedule time to talk with at least one person this week and hear their story. Somebody, maybe you just know them a little bit, and figure out what's important in their life. The antidote to fear is community. We're going to have hundreds upon thousands of conversations again. We're going to have to form those powerful coalitions with like-minded groups and individuals. And so I'm going to challenge you this week to find one new organization and learn what they're doing and see if we have anything in common. And make sure you're signed up for the League update so that you can stay connected to the work of the whole. We are indeed stronger together.
Yeah.
And above all, we need to be joyfully committed And we need to nurture that prairie grass so that those roots spread far and deep so they can protect our democracy and this nation that was founded imperfectly and shaped by the hands of millions of people just like us. And so thank you, my fellow wildflowers, and I will be very happy to take your questions.
Jessica, we're going to leave those for later.
Perfect.
We're running a little behind. What a wonderful message. I have so many notes here. I'm just going to be quoting you for several days. But I did download it. It was easy to download. I did have to put in a password. Oh God. Okay. But it's very easy to, I know, but I love that the antidote to despair is action. And I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Those of us in the upper Midwest that worry so much about water quality and what's happening to it is we just have to keep working. We have to keep working. One of the, so Jessica and
I did put my email and my phone number in the chat. I'll drop it again. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much. And I think we're also going to be seeing you at our retreat, hopefully. One of the things you saw earlier in the action report from Case Lama was a mention of a group called the League US Climate Interest Group. I have to admit, until this popped up, and I think it was Carolyn, our board member Carolyn, that talked about this. I hadn't heard about this group, but it certainly seemed like one that we should know about. And then we discovered one of our own is involved with that group, and that's Joy. Joy, I hope I'm not going to butcher your name. Guskalt Mueller. Was I close?
It sure was, Mary Ellen.
So Joy is chair of the water team for this climate interest group. She's also chair of the League of Women Voters Lake Michigan region, the other regional multi-state interleague organization focused on a major water body like UMR. But she's going to tell us about what the Climate Interest Group is, how it strengthens the work of our ILO and our local leagues in our ILO. So Joy, welcome. Please introduce yourself with your background and explain how you got to this role.
Well, thank you, Mary Ellen. And it's so good to see you, quote, in person on Zoom. You and I had many conversations, I think last June, and did some productive work together. And it's so great to see you. And I'm delighted to see all of you, so many familiar faces. And I have a special feeling of kinship with you because, as Mary Ellen indicated, I'm president of League of Women Voters Lake Michigan region, which is an interstate interleague organization of the 4 states surrounding Lake Michigan: Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I think I said that, yes. And so actually Bonnie Cox wanted to form your organization and used some of her ideas for forming that based on the LWV UMRR organization. At least I think that's how she did it from remarks she's made in previous meetings. And so we feel connected to you. We consider you a sister organization. And so I'm delighted to be here for that reason. So my background is I'm trained as an attorney, and I went to University of Illinois in Champaign and got my undergrad and law degree. And so one of those years while I was married, my last year in law school, I traveled between Chicago, where my husband was, and Champaign. And so my rural experiences, I can tell you how many silos are between Chicago and Champaign, Illinois. Doing that each week. So and I also have a master's of divinity from McCormick Theological Seminary in the Hyde Park, Chicago area. I too was invited to a league holiday party, and that is one of the reasons I joined. And also I spoke up at a city council meeting in Lake Forest on a local issue, and that'll always get league members hunting you down to get involved. And so that's how I got involved in the league. My husband, David Mueller, who's an environmental lawyer, joined the LMR board. And that's how I was introduced to the Lake Michigan region. And ultimately, when I became president, I was approached by Eleanor Ravel in Illinois and Diz Swift in California to join the water team. So it's been just a really exciting ride so far. And I want to share with you today the work that we're doing. And I think you'll find it exciting because our mission really is to take the issue of climate change, which I don't know the extent of what you all experience, but what we're experiencing is we have a speakers bureau, and every league that calls us wants us to talk about climate change and its impact on Lake Michigan and water. And so we both at LMR and also in the Climate Interest Group, LWV US Climate Interest Group, realized that local leagues are crying out for a program that addresses this issue. It is very important. And you know, one of the things I love about educating and advocating for water is that it truly is a nonpartisan issue. Everyone wants clean and safe water to drink. You know, here in Illinois, we get 98% of our drinking water from the Mississippi River and Lake Michigan combined. And so whether you're in Chicago or downstate, you care about clean water. And so it makes it very easy to advocate, but also maintain our fealty to the concept of nonpartisanship. And so that's one of the exciting things I find in this water issue. So I have a PowerPoint here. So if Gretchen or the moderator could give me permission to share my screen, I will pull up the presentation. So I'm going to try to do that.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So let me do this. This is what I'm going to do. And let's see if it will let me do it. Can you see
It's working.
climate
Coming.
change?
It's coming. There
There we
you
go.
go.
Oh, hooray. Okay.
Look
So-
at the skills we learned because of COVID. Woo-hoo.
Oh, yes, silver linings all the time from COVID.
Right.
Finding those, even though it was a tragic time for many people. So this is a presentation we put together to share with you, and you're going to hear it from me today, but we encourage you to use it if you'd like to in any events that you're holding, because the goal of this is to provide content and science-based research to educate climate change and equip them to be good educators and advocates. So we know this is from our LWV US website, and it says that as citizens of the world, we must protect our planet from the physical, economic, and public health effects of climate change, while also providing pathways to economic prosperity. Since this was formed in 2020, we have people can sign up for this group, and we have acquired 1,500 plus league members across the US who are interested in this. And if they're not members, a lot of them are members of our Google group, and they're all interested in educating folks on climate issues. And the goal is to do this research, educate each other, and speak with one voice. So what you see here, and as chair of the water team for LWV US, I also sit on the steering team for the larger climate interest group. And so what you're seeing here under these headings of local action, mitigation, climate links, and intersection of all of these are various teams or sub-teams. We call them teams. They're subgroups, if you will. So there's one for climate action plans. building electrification, food, soils, and agriculture, renewable energy, oceans, water, meaning fresh water, that's our group, forests and wildfires, climate and health, and climate justice. Each of these has a chair and members who focus on these specific areas and learn things together, develop materials, and we have a website where a lot of this is housed for you all to look at and review. So the first team is that we're going to go over is the Climate Action Plans team. And basically what this team is focusing on is educating people on how
Can you
to
read that?
create a full framework or encourage your local legislator, your local officials to create a municipal framework for addressing climate change so that their actions in the city council or your local government view the work they do through the lens of climate change and how the decisions they make are going to impact climate change. So they encourage people to do these things, move away from fossil fuels, electrify buildings, electrify vehicles, reduce vehicle use, and establish important processes that you see there. And due to time, I'm not going to read the slides to you, but I think they're succinct enough. You get the idea of what these folks do. So if that's something that someone in your group wants to join in and to, you can. The other teams for mitigation are food, soils, and agriculture and renewable energy. So our food, soils, and ag group, and we interface with this food, soils, and ag group in the water group. We have written blogs together for the LWV US website because, of course, water and food, soils, and agriculture are inextricably linked. And so we try to educate people through this team of how worldwide food systems emit 37% of greenhouse gas emissions. And so you can see the various action steps that we are encouraging people to pay attention to and educate others about. And then they have a team focus that you can see there that's data-driven and science-based policies and actions, which I would suggest is a current that runs throughout all of the sub-teams. And of course, the work to support farmers and protect agricultural lands from whatnot. You get the important work they do. I want you to go to our website, which I'm going to put that in the chat. They've put together an outstanding food waste toolkit, this team, that local leagues can look at and share with their members on how people can take action in their everyday life. It's not necessarily policy oriented, but so many people say, well, what can I do at home? And so it's a toolkit that's useful. Here are some stats that they wanted to share with people and show them that food waste really contributes to landfills and methane gas, which really increases the gas emissions that contribute to climate change and the severe weather events that go along with that. The renewable energy team shares their definition here, which is they identify, evaluate, and disseminate information to advance the understanding of renewable energy sources and technologies for LWV members, leaders, and supporters. I really enjoy this team. I interface with them and attend their meetings when I can. Brilliant engineers who work for Boeing and other organizations out in California. It's very exciting. If you want to learn about this type of work, great team to be a part of. Then these you see now the teams that are getting close to issues that are near and dear to us, which revolve around oceans and water, forest, and wildfires. So the oceans, they're dealing, of course, with salt water. So they address these issues related to long-term sink for carbon dioxide and offshore wind energy generation and marine coastal ecosystems. And then they also educate folks on many of the things that we educate folks on, which is sea level rise, ecological harm, economic harm, environmental injustice, national security, and storms. And then this water slide, I don't know why rivers aren't on here, because they should be. And of course, the narrative that goes along with it is, of course, people think of rivers and they think of fresh water and rivers. But you know, with the Great Lakes region, of course, these are freshwater oceans. And of course, we advocate for legislation and policies that preserve and protect Lake Michigan. And of course, wetlands and swamps figure into that as well. And we address issues of water conveyance. We study that, drinking water, groundwater, desalination, and conservation. In our team, we have folks that span the country. We've got folks from California, 5 team members that are from California. We've got folks on the East Coast, as well as those from the Midwest. And I am so excited that Susan Clark has joined as a water team member. She's one of your own, and we really wanted a representative from UMR to be present. And what I understand is that your board meetings are often meeting at the same time that we meet, which is the first Monday of the month at 11 a.m. Central. But among other things, we address many of these issues. And in the later part of my presentation, I'll address this more specifically because I have a segment of the presentation that specifically addresses climate change threats to water. Here you see the problems that are faced by forests that are dying with regard to climate change. We're hearing, every week about wildfire damage. And I know that many of you have probably read about the fires taking place in Canada. And it appears that some of the fog and smoke from Canada is coming down. You folks in Minnesota, I think, may have seen some. We're supposed to get some later on in Illinois. A team that does very important work, and you can see some very with our website. And then finally, there are the sections that intersect all of these previous teams, climate and climate justice. And so, of course, with health, the extreme weather events that we're experiencing impact health with the items that are identified there: hurricanes, flooding, wildfire, heat, etc., displacing people, causing people to lose their homes and security, creating water crises and mental health. And then the flooding and sea level rise that creates the problems you see there: contamination and insect-borne diseases, and of course, extreme heat and drought, which also impact people. And of course, in Illinois, we had a multi-car crash because of the dust storms due to the semi-drought conditions in some agricultural fields. So that's the issue that they address. And we have an RN who actually is a professor who heads up that team. And then finally, we have a team that's addressing climate justice and the adverse impacts of a warming climate. And this is something that we all try to embrace in our research and work. So obviously there are many issues. Most of them are interrelated, and there are many unknowns. And how far and how fast is this going to extend? And how much time do we have to address these issues? So we know that local leagues cannot know about all background or even all the issues, but that the need for action is urgent. So the Climate Interest Group provides information on key issues and webinars, quarterly blogs, a website, and an opportunity to participate. There are some folks who talk about tiger teams. Well, a tiger team is basically folks who are fully engaged and have expertise in each of these subject areas. And if you need help in your education and advocacy, we're here to help you. So what we're encouraging people, and this is one of our products that we've created for people to use at their state conventions as a caucus if they like. But what are the major issues, major climate issues for your state, or in your case, states as an interleague organization? And for each issue identified, what actions can and should we take? And how can the league best use our skills? And where can the LWV Climate Interest Group help? So you can ask yourself those questions. And what we're going to do for the next part of the presentation is I am going to give you an example, a presentation that we give related to climate change and water and the impacts of that. And I thought this was a perfect way to translate what you've heard about our groups into a subject area and a team that has direct relevance to you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to escape out of this, and I am going to bring up the second part of my presentation, which specifically addresses climate change threats to water. So I am going to be preaching to the choir for many of you, I know, but I want to share with you the work that we're doing and trying to put together resources that you can use for your education and advocacy. So we begin this presentation with making the statement that the assumption that water is both available and safe to drink may not be true in the future. And of course, we all know that it's happening now. It's happening now. There's in many parts of the country, and indeed in certain parts of the Mississippi River region, there is water that's unavailable and not safe to drink. And so you're focused on the upper Mississippi River region, but of course, you know, you're inextricably linked with the southern Mississippi as well, and their problems can become your problems. So across the US, in terms of impacts that change, there are high water levels, erosions in the Great Lakes. We are seeing this in Lake Michigan now. This year, we're blessed with lower lake levels. There's more beach to walk on. But for many years, we've just had really high water, and the erosion is remarkable. And there are some slides that you won't see today, but of houses falling into the lake. So it really has wreaked havoc in the lakes area. The rising sea levels and resulting floods and saltwater intrusion in coastal areas occur as a result of impacts of climate change on water. And there is growing intensity and frequency of severe weather events, including heat waves, rainstorms, and hurricanes. This is a chart that our friend Tom Skilling, who's the WGN chief meteorologist, shared with us. Tom, for those of you from Illinois, Chicago area, parts of Indiana, and if you have had cable, you may have seen him as well. He's a meteorologist that is highly revered. People love Tom. He's a delightful man. And he was sort of he was a climate skeptic for a while, but came to understand through his work that this indeed is a troubling issue, and has now become a climate activist. So he came to our forum in April of 2022. And what's great about Tom is he has assembled what he calls a dream team of climate scientists from University of Chicago, Argonne Laboratories, University of Illinois, and they put together a great program for us. And so he knows some people will just think of him as a weatherman. So he wants to bring all these scientists with him, and they do a terrific program. And I encourage you to go to the LWV LMR website where you can find a link to watch that program. But Tom showed here in this slide that 2021 ties 2018 for the 6th warmest year on record. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in its 2022 report indicated that most climate change impacts will be connected to water. And I should say, if you look at our climate forum, you will hear from Professor Don Wobbles from University of Illinois, who actually was a co-author of the IPC reports for 2 years. And the publication that he was co-lead author for won a Nobel Prize. So important to hear what he has to say about this issue. And so the impacts that the IPCC report highlights is drought, floods, reliable supplies, and poor water quality. Here you see Lake Erie with the eutrophication due to runoff, ecosystem devastation. Also, examples of climate change impacts are those related to rainfall that cause drought and water scarcity in some areas and flooding in others. And so we have some people, Utah in our group, who they're really suffering from the drought. And a lot of their issues are people want to grow alfalfa and it consumes so much water. People in California, you know, the almond farmers, they consume a lot of water. And so there's this tension between water rights and agricultural rights. And yet our folks on the East Coast, they're experiencing terrible flooding. So we hear each other's stories in this water team group and really come to understand what we're all facing and the science that we're learning science together about how different components impact each state and their water problems. And of course, the persistent drought and lack of water stresses trees, it increases temperatures, and exacerbates wildfires. And then, of course, too much rainfall and some causes flooding, and that's made worse along coastlines by sea level rise and pushes the water table higher. Again, another graphic Tom provided showing the rate of change from 1993 to the present. Now, the rise in ground level impacts septic systems, gas lines, building foundations, and more. And so what you're seeing here is a breach of a septic system by virtue of the ground level water rise. And then runoff from fires and flooding can carry pollutants, debris, and contaminants into waterways, including drinking water sources. So in every part of the country, what we have seen throughout the country is that it's become apparent that 20th century strategies for managing water no longer make sense in the face of climate change. So what to do? Well, first, we're encouraging you to join the LWV US water team. And that's my commercial today. And I will put items in the links in the chat for you to learn more. And then we're also encouraging folks to locally ask their local legislators and candidates how they plan to use the funds received from the bipartisan infrastructure, which real win. We worked with coalition partners, getting permission from the US last year to sign on to letters throughout the process, beginning at the subcommittee level in Congress and going all the way up to passage of the legislation to get funding from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's coming into communities. And if you want to influence how that's used, make sure they're using it, find out how they're using it. With regard to water management, are they investing in gray infrastructure, which is concrete and the old things? In investing in green infrastructure through examples like permeable pavers, native plants, green infrastructure that is actually addressed in the infrastructure bill. And then educate your local officials and community members by holding an educational event on 21st century approaches to water conservation or stormwater management. And here, I think you folks may have this watershed model. I think you were sharing it at the last national convention. I think Gretchen was there doing that show. It's an experiential tool on the right that shows how watersheds work, and it's very compelling. And we have 2 of those in our LMR ILO that we circulate throughout the region that people can borrow for summer school initiatives, Girl Scout troops, environmental expos. And what you see in the lower right-hand corner is our initiative to encourage people to grow natives as nature's water treatment plants. And we put that together with a grant that we received. And then finally, advocate for your local officials to pass and enforce building and permitting codes that encourage sustainability and water use conservation management appropriate to your local watershed. And you can see examples of this, of eco-friendly construction. And so I hope this has been helpful to you. What I'd like to do now, if we have a moment, I'm going to escape out of this and go into this and the group's IO website. And I hope it comes up. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Okay, this is the landing page for the Climate Interest Group. And you can use the QR code that's up there to the right, or you can click here, and we're going to, you can see here's the PowerPoint presentation all ready for you. Here's some information about Tiger teams, climate action by state, which I'm going to go to in a minute. But if you click this, you'll be able to join the group and learn more about this. If you go further down, I'm assuming you can all see that. Am I correct? Can you see this page? Okay.
Yeah.
So, so if you click these buttons, you can, I'm going to click water. Here are items on our webpage, our team's webpage, that you can take a look at. And we take those, and you can go look at anything from any of the other teams, and you'll see it as well. I also wanted to briefly share with you, because I think this will be important to you, a climate exchange website that shows, you can go here and you can click on any state here and find out state climate policy. So let's go up here. State climate policy tracker, and it will tell you what's going on there. You look at them.
Joy, this dashboard is developed by who?
It's
Not the league.
Exchange. It's not the league, but it
Okay.
you can reach it on our website.
Oh,
And
okay.
And download your state data here.
Okay,
So I just commend it to you for a tool that you can use and an example of a tool that we have on the Groups.io website. The other thing that's interesting, if you're interested in the Great Lakes, which I am, and I hope everyone is this is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative website, glri.us, and you can open an interactive map and see where your tax dollars have been at work in preserving and protecting and reclaiming parts of the Great Lake. And it's voting here very slow. But what you're able to do is once this populates, all these dots here are projects that you can hit a project like that, and it'll say Lake Michigan Watershed Field Experience Course, funding agency NOAA, year 2011, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and it tells you how much was spent, what's involved, what was done. Great map if you want to look at data on the Great Lakes freshwater situation. And I think that is all that I have to share with you, except to say, I know when I looked in, you were talking about frustration at local levels or at your state level, but there is hope. You can see that there are many, many people, like-minded people in the league who are interested in not only advocating, but educating one another on issues related to climate change and its impacts on water. And so I hope you will join us. I'm going to escape out of this so that I can stop sharing my screen. Stop share.
wow.
And so I thank you again for letting us speak to you. I put my email address in the chat. I put the LWV Lake Michigan email in the chat and those links that we went over today. We hope you'll join us in the effort. There's a lot of work to do. We need lots of people to do it. And thank you so much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
Joy, this has been wonderful. I guess I just have a quick question because we're running long, but what does it mean to join
So what
your group? Do I have to pick a subset? Do I pay? Do I sign on for a committee? What does joining mean?
Okay, well, you can, first of all, to join, just go to the IO groups. If you can see in the chat, HTTPS,
Right.
IO groups, go there and it'll walk you through how to join. There's no money that you have to pay.
So it's like signing up to get information,
Exactly.
like
And
joining Facebook. Okay.
and we tell people we're not going to bombard you with email. All right. And if you want, and the website itself, the Groups.io website, will direct you to teams. If you feel like you want to go to team meetings, you can. And you can send an email message and they will send it to me or the other team members. And then we will reach out to you and invite you to our meetings. But
Excellent.
if you all want to come to a water meeting and join Susan at the water meeting, our next water meeting is the first Monday in June at 11 a.m. on Zoom. And just drop me an email, or you can send one to Susan and she'll send one to me. And you can drop me an email at LWV Lake Michigan or at my Scott Mueller Law address, and I will put you on the list.
And do you meet every month?
All of the teams meet once a month.
Okay.
Yes. And it's really as much or as little as you'd like to participate. If you just want to learn things and hear what people have to say, or you want to network, you can do it. It's not rigid. It's not set in stone.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to open it up for questions from the group for Joy. comments, or Jessica? It's getting late, so we might be a bit weary, but this has been fascinating. Both of you have just given us information that is so important to our work and to help us understand how we can expand our networks in working together. So just an awesome experience. And I don't want to drag on. I know some of us have missed our supper, but just a really outstanding presentation. And unless there's some urgent business at hand, understand that this is all recorded. It will be up on our website. Gretchen will send out a notice when that's available. So if you miss something and need to go back and look at it, you can do that. Carolyn, hand up. Muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, indeed.
I just wanted to say that I've been on a thread of the Climate Interest Group, their emails, and if you want to have an opportunity to get outstanding technical, professional information, join one of these groups. They have awesome people commenting and working on their projects.
Thank you for that. Sue Johansson.
Yes, I was wondering if the speaker knew if Canada is involved in trying to save the Great Lakes.
Yeah, I think they are, yes, indeed. There is some, sometimes there's negotiation to be done because the pipeline, the line 5 is line 5 that goes through Michigan is really a touchy issue for those of us who protect Lake Michigan. And of course, the Canadians have an interest in that, but yes, they are involved. But we, at League of Women Voters Lake Michigan region, we're focused on Lake Michigan, but of course in the Climate Interest Group water team, we're focused on all of it. But we don't interface directly in LWV US Climate Interest Group with Canada, folks from Canada.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have my water advocacy chair, David Mueller, nearby, and he said, don't forget to tell them about the Great Lakes Compact, which is a compact of the Great Lakes that prohibits diversion of water outside the compact from the Great Lakes. And
Right.
so that is a way in which there is interface between Canada and the US Great Lakes.
Thank you both. This has been just fabulous. I'm sure we'll all be going and downloading the app. Thank you for that, Jessica. We're going to be going on to the SIG website. I tell you, I've made my note for tomorrow to do that because I just think this is wonderful information that fits in. I think the thing I want to leave us all with is part of what Jessica said. It is the network that will impact. It is all of us collectively that will do this. And sometimes we can feel alone, like even UMRR can feel alone, working out here and slogging along. But I think what's so encouraging about what Jessica's doing and what Joy is doing is we're part of this big dynamic group of powerful people, not to mention mostly women, but okay, there are a few men among us, but it just gives me great hope and great optimism that we can make this all happen. And it's by having this kind of information and having this network and having these connections that makes it possible for us to do our work. So thank you all for joining us. Again, it will be up on the UMRR website. You can share this. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you for joining with us tonight. It was just a powerful group. There are some questions about costs that we can discuss those later. Okay, we'll take care of that. Jerry has a hand up. No, Jessica.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I wanted to clarify that, Deborah's helping me think through this too. So I wanted to clarify that what I envision the ILO using, the League in Action for, that is where there would be no cost. If you run a large text banking campaign, like Wisconsin did, where you're personally texting people, there is I think it's 1 cent per text. So Deborah just wanted me to not mislead you about what part of the cost is being carried by LWV US. So that's a very good point. But all of the cost, as far as not the individual texting, but all of the rest of the cost is being carried by LWV US right now. So,
Okay,
but all of that stuff gets really detailed. And if you decided to use it, we could discuss all of that.
we'll get there when the
And
time
Jessica,
comes.
we will all go out and talk to someone who has a different viewpoint, and let's get some young people involved.
Exactly.
I
Okay,
love
great.
you.
Thank you again. And thank you to our tech person, perfect person, Gretchen Sabo. Thank you for holding us all together. I hope to see you all again in a year and bring more friends next time. A good night to all. A good night to all.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.